Okay, welcome everybody to this morning's webinar. My name is Charlie Taylor. I am one of the CE consultants here at KDLA. And just while I'm doing my introduction, if you wouldn't mind to go ahead and chat in and let me know how the sound is for you. So far it looks like we're doing well. And also, kind of while I'm talking, if you haven't already, go ahead and take our poll there in the bottom portion of the screen. Let us know if your library is currently offering any kind of like life skills programming, specifically for your older adults. I know this has become a hot thing for young adults, your teens and things like that, learning soft skills, as a lot of people like to call them, but are you currently doing anything specifically for older adults? And somebody just said yes, which is great, and if you wouldn't mind, whoever that is, please chat in and let us know what it is. I know Angie said they're doing bingo, but okay. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. All right, this is Skillbuilders. Welcome everybody to Skillbuilders. Couple of things to keep in mind today. If you have any questions for our presenter as we go along, please use the chat pod. It's going to be on the right-hand side of the screen today. Go ahead and chat in any questions or comments. She's really looking for some feedback. You know, we missed that personal element when you do webinars, you know, so you're not seeing people's facial reactions or nodding heads and stuff like that. So please feel free to chat in your agreement, disagreement, questions, things like that. Also, if you have any technical issues, anything happens with the sound or the slides, you can use the chat pod to let me know about that, and I'll do my best to help you out with that. At the end of the webinar, you can see on the page that we're on right now, you can download a PDF of the slides. That will also be available at the end of the webinar, so if you'd like to wait until the end to get those, you can do that. And just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available within about 1 week on our archived webinars page. And so you can feel free to come back and review any of the information, or definitely share it with any of your colleagues, anybody else who's involved in adult programming. And it looks like, okay, so Boone County is currently doing programs around the theme of navigating retirement. Excellent and very important topic these days. All right, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to our presenter for today. Her name is Patty Johnston. She is recently retired from the Lawrence Public Library, which is in Kansas, and she was the Outreach Services Coordinator. And she's enthusiastic about this topic, and I think she's really looking forward to sharing and her knowledge with you guys. So we're going to go ahead and welcome Patty, and Patty, you can come on and take over the webinar.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for everybody having the interest to coming here today. As she just said, I've just recently retired from the Lawrence Public Library. I was there for 45 years, which doesn't seem possible, but I was there for 45 years. The last 17 years, I was the outreach coordinator. Prior to that, I was the circulation department coordinator. So I've always had that public aspect to it. Just a little bit about myself. As I said, I've been at the library for 45 years, originally from Virginia, so I'm very familiar with Kentucky, and as Charlie and I were talking about it, I'm really interested to see where you are from. Boone County, Scott, I've worked very much with Melody, one of the outreach coordinators there with you, or at Boone County. I do know where Owensbury is, and I appreciate it, just getting an idea of where. Sperling, you bet she is. That's the one. And so I hope, nice to see that smiley face with it. Just to get an idea of where you're from, because I do know you're from all over in the state of Kentucky, which means you have a varying sizes of your libraries. And that's going to make a little bit of a difference, but I hope with Skillbuilders you'll find out that it's adaptable to whatever community you are, because it's very unique to your community. Just to give you a bit of a background, again, as I said, I've not done a webinar before, and I have to admit I really am interested to see how people respond, and so not seeing your faces, I'm really going to need for you to kind of ping in with your ideas, with your comments and such. So please feel free and don't hesitate to make comments as we go along with this. What Skillbuilders is we know we did not invent the wheel with this. We didn't. This is an idea that is going to be familiar to some of you, but we think that we have a little bit of a unique take on some of these programs, and we think that's why it's been a successful program. For those of you who do programming for any age group, for any group at all, you know the frustration of taking the time to do a good program, have a good one, whether it's entertaining, whether it's instructional, whether it's educational. You take the time to put it up, and then you offer it, and one or maybe two people or nobody shows up, and that is so frustrating. But I do want to let you know that Skillbuilders has now, this will be the 14th year that Lawrence has presented Skillbuilders. It'll be the 16th year for the Kansas City area where we got the programming from. So we do think that this resonates with people, and it resonates with people for all ages and no matter the size of the community. So hopefully you'll find something that will really resonate with your community. Skillbuilders, as you notice there, we call it Skillbuilders, but it's an education and support for those experiencing life transitions due to grief and loss. A little bit of a background about Skillbuilders. Skillbuilders came about because there was a gentleman in the Kansas City area who was giving a financial investment program at a senior community, and afterwards a lady came up to him and said, "Thank you for coming, but I just recently lost my husband, and I'm finding it hard to make decisions. I'm just kind of stuck. I'm a very capable person. I did it before, but everything you said makes sense to me, but I'm just having some difficulty. I appreciate you coming, but I'm just not sure what I can do about it." And when he got home, he got thinking about that and saying, you know, when you are going through a transition of any kind, your decision-making becomes kind of hindered. And he wondered what else besides just the financial part this lady may have been having some difficulty with. So what he did is he talked to a friend of his who is a social worker at the hospice. And he said, if I were to do this program again, how would I change it and how would I address it for the people who are going through a transition such as major as a grief and loss? And she gave him this information that you'll now see on the screen with this slide about grief and loss. If you have ever experienced any kind of a grief yet, whether it's been the loss of a spouse, a partner, a very close friend, a family member, a parent, you do know that you start looking at common things a little bit differently. And that's why she said grief and loss comes in many forms and from many sources. It affects how one perceives oneself and one's place in the world, how it affects decision-making and self-confidence, because it affects physical, mental, and emotional health. It affects every part of what you do. And that's when he started thinking about a program that would come from this perspective. And this is why we feel that Skillbuilders is a little bit unique in the same program, but coming from this perspective is different. A bank often will give a financial program, how to do budgeting, how to make financial decisions and such. But if you're now the one making the decisions and you're having difficulty doing that, it just kind of glosses right over you with it. So what we did with Skillbuilders is that we took common, everyday, ordinary things that you have to deal with and came from the perspective of a person who is going through a transition. So as you know, and as we said, it comes in many different ways. So look at this list right here, and you can probably even come up with more reasons with it, that you go through a life transition, and it is so major that it does affect how you think, whether it's the death of a loved one, illness, chronic illness, someone whose husband or wife or family member has MLS or Parkinson's, anything that comes along that affects it so drastically. Your own personal illness. You're now making decisions of what do I do with my life now. A divorce. A divorce can, as many have gone through this, we'll just describe it as a death because everything changes with it. Thinking about your own family members, too, is if you have to change your address or a living arrangement. How many people do you know, especially older adults, who said, I've moved here from California, my children are here, so I've come here, but look what they have lost. Look where their place in the world is now. They've left their home, their friends, and they've come to a place where everything is new again. And then also we have those aging limitations. That was one of the things, too, with it, is that as we get older, things do change. I tell you what, I'm very much of a floor sitter myself, and getting up and down out of the floor now is much harder for me than it used to be. And I thought, I don't want to give up doing this, but I'm not sure how much longer I can do just getting up and down from the floor. Just because I spread everything out on the floor in front of me, do my work, and then try to get up after sitting for 20 or 30 minutes, and it's much harder. So these little aging limitations that you start realizing, and it can be very devastating at times when you realize just what these changes are going to be. So as I look at this list, for those of you who said that you do and you don't do senior programming or any kind of life skills, does any of this resonate with why you might do something? Why you might have a program? What are the kind of programs that you might be able to give to your older residents? And so looking at that, think about what all it does. It's not just through death. It can also it can become, again, that living arrangement, someone who's lived in a home all their life, lived on the family home place for all of their life, maybe even the place they were born, and now they're moving into a senior community. That is going to be a major, major life change. And what does that do to them? So thinking about that, there might be some programs that you could do, even if it's not skill builders, but something that you can do that would address some of those issues for your older adults with it. Skill Builder presents common topics from a unique perspective. The grief and loss can hinder thought patterns, making it difficult to make decisions. How many times have you heard somebody say, I'm a very capable person, or all of a sudden I just don't know what to do. I just don't know. Presenting information on commonly needed topics from a perspective of one that is dealing with loss, you start seeing that needed information through a prism of differing emotions, and those emotions changed constantly. Today may be one way. Tomorrow you're looking at that and going, I didn't even think about that. I don't know that I can deal with this today. I heard a song. I smelled a smell. I feel lonely today. So you have a different prism that you're looking at it through. Does this make sense to what y'all are looking at, that what you might be understanding your own self with it? Does this seem to make sense to you? Very good. Very good. Thank you. What we do want to very much insist upon, too, is Skill Builders is not a grief support group. This is not something that where we want you to, where they're intended to come and just talk about the grief and such. It's intended to be a toolkit to provide that information. And if things, you don't know what you don't know sometimes. And that can be the very frustrating part and very scary. Very, very scary. So what we wanted to do with the Skill Builders is to provide that little toolkit of saying, here are common problems, here are common issues, who is someone you can talk to, here's the basic information, and then go from there with it. Again, what you don't know. The legal part, the financial part, you're going, I don't even know who to call. And you can live even in a small community and still not know who to call. We wanted to provide that toolkit so people can have the confidence in knowing who to contact, how to understand oneself and what you're going through at the time, and that you're not alone in this, and that you're not how many people say, I think I'm going crazy. I feel like I'm going crazy. But this helps them to have that little platform and to know what others have done in similar situations. And oftentimes, too, perhaps if you've worked with older adults, or you may have even heard family and friends say, I don't want to tell the kids, they're going to think, they'll just do it for me. They'll just do it for me, and I still won't know, and I don't want them to feel like I'm incompetent with it. So we want to give them that support so that they feel confident. They want to feel confident. They're just kind of stuck at the moment with it. One of the things I also want to talk about, too, is, again, being very, very clear of what it is not. I don't know how big your communities are. In the larger communities, generally you will have a support group that's available for those who have lost family members. A lot of times the funeral homes will have them. A hospital will have them and such. But be very, very clear that this is not what Skillbuilders is intended to be. We are not trained psychologists. We are not trained counselors and such. But we do have that information for folks who would like to have that and have not gotten that resource yet. If you have any questions, as I said, what I hope to do with this is to give you what Skillbuilders is, how to establish your group or get organized with a Skillbuilders group, some of the suggestions of what programs you might include in a Skillbuilders program, how to maintain it, the maintenance part of it and such. I'm going to give you suggested topics, ones that have been very popular, ones that have gone over well here, and then contact information if you would like more information. So as we go through this, there's questions that you may have, but this is what's upcoming. This is what's upcoming with it. So to establish any kind of a group, now I'm going to ask you this, is for those of you who have done programming and have done any kind of a group, be it a book club or anything else, how do you generally determine what you're going to do? How do you determine that you're going to have this kind of a program or you're going to have this kind of a series? Have you done that before? And if you have, how have you done that? Scott says he's typing. Okay. Sometimes it's going to be determined by the size of your community because it's going to determine what resources you have. I can tell you that we have all of these in Lawrence. Lawrence is approximately 90,000 people. We're just west of Kansas City, and of course Kansas City is a major metropolitan city, but they have resources that we don't have. We also have a number of small cities around us and towns around us, but they use Lawrence as their resources. So that possibly is something that you do. Through the Facebook post and from the circulation desk. Hey, you say you do it through from the circulation desk. Do you ask your patrons what they would like? Would they attend? Or what do you ask them, and how do you do it from circulation desk? Do you have a measuring? How do you measure that? Do you have okay, Scott, you say that you know that this will work in this branch like crafting. How do you know that it'll work? Okay, that's great. Emily, that sounds really good. That Friday morning coffee club, you know, I've seen that in a number of places, and it always seems to work out well. It's nice to have them come into the library instead of going to McDonald's or Burger King, I guess, because, you know, there's always going to be a group there. I like the idea, Kay, that you say you pinpoint people. You know, there's something very, very nice about being invited. You know, I'd like to have your opinion. You know, I think this is something that you would be interested in. Please come. I think that's very, very nice. I know I like to be invited to things. You know, if they think that they've taken my interest to it. There you go. It's that McDonald's crowd. You bet it is. With it. One of the things about this is all kind of, and you're coming up with great ideas to be able to share with this. One of the things that makes a difference with it too is that you do have to know your community, and that's one of the most important things that you do for any kind of programming. And it's extremely important for the Skillbuilders group, as you said, Kay, that you're small enough that you really know your patrons. That's also very good for something like Skillbuilders too, because you feel a little bit more comfortable be able to say when somebody, you know that they're experiencing a transition of some kind, and that you can kind of cater a little bit to the idea of if this person's going through it, you know that they have friends and loved ones that are also doing it, and going through it. Is when you establish any kind of a program, and this is a series of programs. It's not just one isolated program that's given at any given time. Skillbuilders is actually a series of programs. And when you do that, you're going to need to have a focus group. Who are you focusing? Who is your intended audience? And you've always heard that, and I'm sure that you've all heard that no matter what kind of programming thing you've read or heard about, you do have to establish the focus group. With Skillbuilders, we know it's people who are going through a transition. No matter what that transition is, they're going through that transition. And we do know that that goes across all age groups. Death and transition does not isolate itself to one particular age group. So what we've done, though, with our Skillbuilders group is we have deliberately targeted and focused on the older adults, because that's going to determine when you have it and where you might offer it with it. And it's also then going to depend on possibly the programs that you choose to do. So in your community, you need to isolate what focus group do you want to do. Do you want to do for the older adults, or do you want to have it so that people who are in that mid-age group who are still working can attend these programs, which is going to make a difference, again, on where and when you do it, how you do that. One of the second things, and this can be extremely difficult depending on your community because you think you know it, is what's currently being offered in your community. What kind of programs and what kind of businesses are already offering programs to folks, for instance? Is there a bank that talks about retirement? Is there a bank that has any kind of financial counseling or how to do stocks and bonds, how to do budgeting? Is there a bank? Now, of course, they're going to come from a different perspective. This is going to be a general one of how to do it, where Skillbuilders would be different. But is there a bank that's doing that? Is there a health department in your community or nearby that provides tests, like blood pressure tests? Is there one that establishes programs for older adults on how to live alone or on balance or on nutrition? Who's doing what? Find out in your community. Now, if you're like me, I thought I knew. I really thought I had a pretty good handle of who was doing what. I read the newspaper. I listened to the radio. But once we started to decide that we were going to do one of these, I had to do a much more thorough idea of what was being handled or offered in the community and who was doing it, who was doing it, and when were they doing it, and is this something that we needed to do? Did we need to include in this one? Or could we ask them and say, hey, we're offering this new program. Would you be interested in coming in and partnering with us to do it from this perspective? Still do your own, but would you be interested in doing this? So you really do need to understand your community. Now, Kay, you said you're a very rural community. Some of the others, I'm even recognizing some of your the counties of where you are. Kenton, I believe you're up in the northern part up there near Covington, up that direction. You're going to vary. Do you know what's already being offered? Is that one of the reasons why you haven't been offering some programs such as this? Or is it that it just hasn't come up in your library as something you thought you would do? If you're a smaller community, where are your resources such as medical and health and financial information and such? Staffing is always a problem. Thing about the Skillbuilders group, the staffing that you would have to do with this actually is just getting it organized, because you don't do the speakers. You don't present the programs. What you do is you get the speakers and they come in to you. And budget is the same way too. We have only had to pay one group of people ever to come in. The rest of them do it because it's in their best interest. It's also a community service. So when you think about what is it that we need to do, as I said, all you have to do is set it up. you don't have to do it, and that can make a difference in the staffing with it. And also, if you have partners, you divvy up the jobs that you need to do for it. So currently find out what's going on in your community, and then determine what topics you would like to offer and what ones are going to be your core topics. In the original Skill Builders, the first one that Steve did in Kansas City, after talking with the lady at the social worker at the hospice, they only did a 5-week program. There was a 5-week series. And what they did with that is they decided which topics would be the biggest draw. What are the ones that would be the most needed at that time? And what they did is they determined that the financial, the legal issues, medical issues, what is grief, how am I adjusting to transitions with it? And they just determined how are they going to do that. And then they also, physical fitness is that when someone's going through a transition, sometimes you forget to take care of yourself. So they determined that those were the 5 top core topics that they were going to offer for the first time. And when we started here in Lawrence, we followed suit. So what we did is we decided which programs we were going to do, how we were going to do it, and then we started determining what we wanted to do with that. How did we want to do it in that? Who was our targeted audience? Who was already doing those core topics? And how many we were going to do in that series were the most feasible for us at that time. And 5 was how we started out. Then we determined what day of the week, the time, and the location. Now, in some of y'all's communities, you already have things that are going to be going on at the same time. For instance, Scott, you were talking about the crafting programs and such too. I'm quite certain that in a lot of your communities, there's the churches, and there's maybe one day a week when the ladies get together and do quilting, or they make the blankets they give out to people who are going through a difficult time. There's things that are already going on during the day. Make sure you know when those are going on, and don't go up against it. If Wednesday is church day in your community, don't put it on Wednesday. But find out, too, when the different groups are already meeting in town, and then determine when would be the best time for you to do it. So what we did and what worked out best for us was Tuesday mornings. The only thing that we had to worry about going up against, and I don't know how it is in y'all's community, but I tell you what, Price is Right is one big thing in our older community here. If you go up against Price is Right, just depend on the fact that you're not going to get as big a crowd, and don't do it. But we decided we were going to pick one day, and we did. We have gone up against Price is Right, and so far we're winning. If it was still Bob Barker, I don't know if we would or not, but we still got it going with that. So we determined a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, from 10 to 11:30. And then we needed to know where we were going to do it. The first ones, we had it at the library with it. And we had to, we put it at the library. But we had to change it after a while because the library was being renovated. So we had to determine, were we going to stop having Skill Builders? Because where we were going, we could not do programming in the library. So what we did is we kind of put it out where we were already doing some, with our book van stops and our lobby stops. One of the senior communities offered their public room to us and said, you know, for no charge, we would love to have you come and do it here. And when we made that change, it was wonderful. We would have never thought to go there. We would have thought it might have been a little bit of a business connection that we didn't want to do. Yeah, do Price is Right. That would be a great idea. But, you know, Scott, that's a great idea. You put an idea in my head there with it. What we did then is we were at the senior community. You have a ready-made audience. We got good response from those that live there. And because it was a kind of a neutral site, folks really came with it. When the library was renovated, we came back to the library and found out that the rooms that we had, they didn't like it. Folks we did not have as good of attendance, and when we asked about it, they said the room's too dark. We feel very closed in. The other rooms were so much nicer. So what we did is we asked that community, senior community, would they be willing to host us again, and we've gone back out there now for the past 2 years, and the group has continued to grow. And it's not just from the folks who live in that community, but because it's a good place to come and it's very comfortable, it's a great partnership with us. Exactly, Emily, that's exactly it. Is you remember, these folks are still wanting to know things. They need to know things, and they're not going to get out always to go to the library to find out about it. This would be a great thing for you to go out and ask that the senior center if this would be something that you could partner with. That would be a wonderful place to do it. The two places that we do suggest that you do not work or to do a Skillbuilders is the hospital and perhaps the health department. Both of them are great to have as partners with you in Skillbuilders, but both of those places can have connotations for folks that they don't want to reach again. They may have lost someone at the hospital. They may have had, that's where they went when they found out that they were diagnosed with something that they're contending with. So we would suggest that you don't do a hospital public room or the health department, but a senior center, the parks and recreations. If you have a historical society where they have public rooms, any of those are wonderful places to work out for it with it. And especially if you have like a Parks and Rec where they have a community center where there's also a walking area or treadmill and such where people can also be encouraged then to do the exercise part. We found it to be a very, very good place. Which brings us right into good partners. Now that goes back to knowing your community. Currently, do any of you partner with any of the business or organizations in your community to do any kind of outreach programming? When I say that, I think of things like Parks and Rec, your senior center, the banks, any of the therapy groups. We've even had we've had pharmacists and doctors and dentists and optometrists offer to do programming and do it with us. Extension service. Kay, you stole part of my thunder here with it, because if y'all have an extension service in your county, use them. They are a marvelous resource. Oh, SNAP. Yes, SNAP is definitely one of them with it. How's your SNAP program? Who runs your SNAP program? If you're not familiar with SNAP, that's the for nutrition and food sources. That's one of the major things that we've really found out that we need to do with it. Oh, dear, that's too bad. I hope that they replace that position with it. If not, find out who else could possibly be in there with it. That is, like I said, keep on them. You know, say we don't want to lose your partnership. Keep it up right there with it. As I said, local job search, that's a great one too. With the older adults, sometimes they do. They want that, what they call an encore. And sometimes you just need that little extra money. I don't know how you have it there, but out here we have a couple of grocery stores where they have older adults who are greeters at the front doors. And I've laughed, even said now that I've been off for a month, I'm going, maybe I was actually talking about going out and either being a greeter at the Hy-Vee or having a little lemonade stand here on the corner of my own yard. But, of course, I was thinking more like Jell-O shots than lemonade. But, we can talk about it as spring comes along with it. Who would be the good partners? And you're coming up with some wonderful ones here. The Extension Office, again, I cannot emphasize more with you. With it, I'll talk a little bit more of how we use our Extension Office here in a few minutes. But Extension Office is a great place for you to do that. Your local hospital, any of your health departments, the hospices. in your community. And just because one signs up doesn't mean that another one can't. Whoever would like to be the partner, go with that. Go with that. Don't determine that just because we have one hospice, we can't offer it the other. No, most of them do a little bit differently, each one of them, so you have a different resource that you can draw on with that. So determine in your community who would be good partners with you. Most of the time with a library, they don't think of you often as being someone that they could partner with. When I first started doing outreach and I was just finding out more of what's going on in the community, I would attend different meetings like of the local senior center or of the local advocacy council on aging or the food policy council or different things that were just going on in the community, and they would look at me and say, we never even thought to invite the library. Well, why not? Why were they not asking about the library? Why not including the library into it? Because sometimes, people get the idea that the library is what their grandmother's library was like or what the library was like when they were a child, and don't realize that the library really has changed and that the library can do so much more. And it is a great partnership to be with it because they can come in and partner with you. You can go out and partner with them, and the whole community then learns more about what everybody is doing with it. So go with the partners. Then once you also decide on what topics you want to do, who in your community would be the good presenters for that? If you're going to do something on the financial, do you personally know someone in the banking area or, savings and loans who would be a good person to come and just talk basically about financials and budgeting? What do you need to do now that perhaps your income has changed? What to do now that you are the only one making the financial decisions? How do you just redo your budget? You're down now to one income, or your income has changed with it. And again, that's where it gets scary, and when someone's going through a life change. And this one can be so scary. So who do you know in the community that could possibly address this particular group in this particular way? And we all know that there's varying presenters and that some people are good at it and some people aren't. And so reach out to those that you think would be a good speaker, who would understand the unique perspective that you're coming from and would be able to talk well with this group of people. You want to make sure that it's comfortable. You want to make it so that they're not selling anything or that it's over what your group would be wanting to do. So again, who in the banking world would do that? Then in the legal part of it, one of the main things, if you're like me too, and I've heard it so often with myself and others around me, is, gosh, I only have one question and I don't want to pay $150 per hour just to ask that one question. So if you know someone in the legal careers there in your offices who would be willing to come and just talk about basic legal issues, have people who are in the Skillbuilders group be able to ask just certain questions like, do I really need a will? People are telling me about a trust, and I don't even understand what that is. What do I have to do now? That's another one of the scary parts that I was talking about, of you don't know what you don't know, and then you feel helpless. So when you're going through these different changes and you've made all of these different changes, legally, what do I have to do or what should I do? So look to see who would be a presenter in your community that would be real good with that. Same with the medical. If you have a good pharmacist who will come and talk about pharmacy, someone who, again, understands the focus group. Again, with ours, it's the older adults. How do you work with them with their medicines and making them understand what the pharmacy can do for you, what assistance they can provide for you, and what information that they have that you won't ask your doctor, but you might ask your pharmacist with it. Again, how to have someone come and talk about food and nutrition. Okay, this is where I'm going. This is the absolutely part. Like I said, you set it up great. We have, the Extension Office has the home and food, home and family. And our extension agent actually will come out and provide one meal. She cooks at this program. It's called Cooking for One or Two. And she comes out and talks about nutrition, talks about dental health because of the nutrition and how food works, how it mixes with your medicines, also how to go shopping at the grocery store with it. Then she makes a meal. She makes a meal, and in the last couple of ones, we've actually gone out to the extension office, and the group cooks. It's in the extension office's kitchen, and each one of each table has a little hot plate on it, and they all cook and eat. So again, you have that camaraderie and that sharing of a meal to where you don't feel so alone. We also, because we got a small grant at one time, we've handed out cookbooks. It was the Taste of Home Cooking for One or Two cookbook. So that we don't just say you ought to do this. Here we give you a tool that you can use to do that. Because too often, and as our extension officer Susan says, it's okay to have cereal once or twice a week, but let's not have it every night. And that happens. She also talks about it's okay to have ice cream every now and then for supper or popcorn, but let's make sure you get some of the nutrition. And then she talks about why the nutrition is so good, because your medicines don't work as well. So when we put it into the perspective of saying, I know that you're going to have cereal every now and then. I know that you're going to have ice cream every now and then. But here's the reason why you also need to have other foods and give them that tool to do that. Have any of y'all, again, Kay, you've used it. You were talking about, let's see, Scott, you said you've used the extension services. How have you used your extension services? Okay, you're typing. I appreciate it. For those of you who are not sure, do you know if you have an extension service in your county? This is it's a federal government program, actually. Every state has extension offices. Sometimes they will be in the county where you are, but I do know that there's been some states where not every county has done it. They have it for a region. But if you've not used them, I highly recommend using your extension office. But they do it for the children's programs. Have you ever thought about using for the adult programs? Yeah, agents do keep changing. That is, but make the connection with the extension office, not just with the agent. Oh, gardening, great, Scott. That is a great one to do it. The SNAP and the gardening. Yeah, a lot of folks think the extension office is really just for farming issues or gardening issues. It's much broader than that. Much broader than that. Great, thanks, Charlie, for doing that, because that is a resource that investigates, because you'll be surprised what all they do offer for you. Just for the maintenance kind of thing, or how to upkeep with it, one of the things that we have definitely found when you do have this, because it's a series of programs, we always emphasize the fact that it's not that if you come to one, you have to come to all. That's not true. We offer now a 10-week series. So we don't expect everyone to come to every one of them. It ends up that most do. It becomes also a social group to get together with it. But we don't say that you have to come to all of them. Come to the ones that you find of interest. And so it can vary as far as the attendance go, but for them at the moment, we're averaging about 20 to 25 per program. So we feel like this is, as I said, it is resonating with it. Oh, Angie, great idea. Extremely good idea. Angie's saying that it'll be building garden boxes for the senior apartments that are next door to the library. That is a great idea. Again, use your extension office with it. When you arrange the room, tables are really good if you can, because people like to write. They get the information and then they like to write it on it. Whether it's you or whether it's one of the partners with it, you really should have someone there all the time for each one of the programs. Select a person to be the host for the group. It's one of the core people, somebody that the attendees are going to recognize that they're going to be there. You welcome the attendees, you introduce the topic and such, but you keep the conversation going too, especially in the early weeks when people may be a little more hesitant to ask questions or to share something. We do ask that, it's one of those guidelines of saying, this is for you. If you're comfortable just sitting and enjoying the program, please do. If you'd like to participate, ask questions, we'll encourage you to do that. But it's not one of those kind of groups where everyone is expected to participate. If they just want to sit and listen, everybody's good with that too. It's also good to have that little guidelines of saying we encourage you to participate, but we also remember that you respect everyone's opinion and that you respect what they've gone through and realize that all of us may have a reason that we're coming here, and to respect the privacy and make it comfortable for people to be able to come with that. We also then realize, too, some people, because it becomes a personal sharing, can dominate. And that's when you can step in and be the one. It isn't the speaker, it's you to say, that looks like something that you might want to talk to them afterwards. Let's continue on with what the speaker has to say, and we can continue this afterwards with it. And that puts it so that they are comfortable, the speakers are comfortable, and your attendees are. Handouts are encouraged. Sign-in sheet, that way you know who's coming and that they feel like that you can, that they're a part of the group, you can have it. These are all just maintenance things. Now, I will tell you here, if at all possible, refreshments. Now, when y'all give your programs, do you generally have refreshments? Do you have cookie money even to have for this? Generally in the children's programs, you might have something, but with the adults, have you ever or do you generally have refreshments? One of the things that we have found, not usually, one of the things that we found to get the gentlemen to come, because these are the kind of programs where you're generally going to get ladies. We do know that as we get older, the gentlemen there's not as many. Usually it's more of the ladies such. But whether it's gentlemen or ladies, if you have refreshments, we found out we get more gentlemen. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be just, cookies and coffee. Generally always have ice water, maybe have coffee if it's possible and such. But I'll tell you, having the refreshments really does make a little bit of a difference to it. And it also makes it just very friendly. It's just nice to have the cookies there with it. But you don't have to. You don't have to with it. Family resource center. Yes, see, your partners can come through on that. Exactly. You have that. That's what happened with our grants, too, is we had to have a sign-out sheet of saying, what did you think of the program? What did you think of the speaker? What would you offer this again? So, Angie, yes, that is a good point. It's one of those things of evaluation. That way it also helps you to evaluate what the speaker was like, whether you heard the same thing that your audience did, whether this is a topic that they really liked, or is this something that you should do with it. Was the room too hot? Was the room too cold? If you put that on there, you're never going to win. So I would say you shouldn't do that. But you can say, which do you like having the tables and such, but don't ask if it's too hot or too cold. That one's like, yeah, you're never going to do it. Measurable outcome. Now, if your library is like ours was and is with it, is you do have to have some kind of, is there a reason why our staff is taking this much time to do this? And we do know that programs such as this are hard to measure the outcome. It's too subjective. Attendance you can do. Attendance you can find out, and if you aren't getting more than 3 or 4, yes, you probably should be reevaluating it anyway. But if you have the idea of saying we have to have 10 or it won't go, or 20 or more. You know, you've got to realize, too, if you've got a focus group that is going to be smaller, big numbers you're not going to get. You can't compare it, for instance, to the children's or the teen programs because you're just not going to get those kind of numbers. Your audience is not that audience with it. The attendance is measurable, and you're not going to know the results possibly of it. This, because of the nature of skill builders, because you don't know what they may have gotten out of it, how they are feeling about it and such, you cannot measure it. But you can get anecdotal. You do have the comments from those who are attending. You can also find out as it goes along from the comments, and if you want to put it in paper, that's fine too. But you might want to also listen to what they're saying. If they come back, if they bring friends with them, if they say, I would like to have another flyer, I have someone that I need, would think would need this or would appreciate this, can I share this with them? So the measuring of this can be difficult. Again, your attendance is probably the most measurable that you can do with it. And I would suggest that if you have a program with the Skill Builders, don't go by just the first one. You can measure what maybe the location was not good if you don't have a big crowd. Is the timing, the location, the date, and the time. But at least do it 2 times. We offer it in the spring and in the fall. We don't do it in the summer because that's our community. Maybe your community would do it better in the summertime. But again, that's knowing your community. But I would suggest at least 2 series of the programming for you to determine whether it really goes well or not with it. And it may be, too, that the whole Skill Builders may not be something you want to do, but there are programs within the suggested topics with this particular emphasis and perspective that you might want to do. So if you can't do a 5-week series, you know, in 5 weeks, or even the 10 weeks or once or twice, narrow it down to, say, 1 or 2. And here's a listing of the suggested topics that, and again, you can just draw from these and then look at more. As Scott gave me another idea of how to do something there, too, with it. But we've divided it down here a little bit into, like, finances and budgeting. You can divide that down even further if somebody really wants to know more about how to set up an exact budget, how to determine on a budget how to change my finances and such. Basic legal concerns, again, what's a will? Do I need a will? What's a trust? What do I need to do? And such. So you'll notice that it's under finances and budgeting, which are basic legal things that you need to know about. Then we do more of the personal kind of programming, such as understanding grief and loss. Who am I now? Now that your life has changed, regardless of what the reason was, who am I now? And with older adults, you may not have thought about this deliberately like this, but you may know people such as this. Someone like our mothers and our grandmothers' ages, they went from being someone's daughter to someone's wife to someone's mother, and now they're alone. They're back to being single, and for the first time in their life, they may have to determine who they really are. And that can be a very, very scary thing, a very scary thing. Also, the physical fitness part of it, just the whole health and well-being, physical fitness, stress. We all have stress. Again, that cooking for 1 or 2, the medical part, doctors, tests, pharmacy. Then the whole idea of downsizing, reorganizing, housing options in your community. You may have a lot of housing options, and a lot of times you don't. But then find out what the options are, understand what they are, and then help people know when to decide to do that. Gardening, car care. Car care is our rock star guy. He's the only gentleman, he owns his own filling station here in town, and it's the only one that will put the gas in for these ladies. They have a full-service gas station. They have a self-serve, but they also have a full service. So that one's kind of fun with that one, too. And like I said, he's a very nice-looking man, and these ladies love him. I mean, they love this man with it. And then the last one here, it goes back to the extension office. It's who gets grandma's yellow pie plate. It's how to decide who gets what and where it all goes. That's not downsizing. This is the personal property, and sometimes it's hard to know what to do with things that hold a personal selection with it. You know, for instance, the whole story is there's one yellow pie place that Grandma's always used, and there's 3 grandkids, and each one of them wants it. What is Grandma going to do? How do you divide this down? So there's a lot of programs within all of these, too. Handling the holidays. How do you take care of yourself during the holidays when you've gone through a transition? If you're interested in establishing a Skillbuilders, if you need more information, we do have a step-by-step instruction and suggestion booklet. We wrote one up last year. We actually copyrighted it. So if you would like to have one of these copies of this book, I can send it to you electronically or I can send it to you via the mail. Just let me know. It gives you more details about how to establish the Skillbuilders, all of the different little nuances of determining location and time and such, just a step-by-step with it. Also helping you to evaluate your community, determine the feasibility of how to do a Skillbuilders or something similar. Again, be glad to assist you in any way that I can to do that, and we can do it electronically, traditional mail, by phone, or depending on where your location is. I'm telling Charlie, now that I'm retired, I'm mobile. I will be glad to come even and talk to you about it and help you to kind of evaluate that, and also with the suggestions for topics or partners, and again, knowing your community and organization. And again, I'll be happy to help you and assist you in any way I possibly could with that. Here's my contact information. Great. I can do that. Kay, I'll do that, and I'll get that so that y'all can go to one particular source to get that. Be glad to do it. Again, here's my contact information. This is all my home stuff, so if you're in Lawrence, Kansas, come on by. I live on the corner. We've got a nice little bungalow. Glad to see you. And so, again, thank you. And if you have any other questions, I think we still have about 5 minutes left. So if you have any questions that I haven't covered or that are specific here, if there's something that I glossed over and you didn't quite get, be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Patty, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And if you and I can work it out, maybe you can go ahead and send me that instructional booklet, and then whenever I do the follow-up email, I can send it out to everybody. So we'll just go ahead and give it to everybody.
I'd be glad to do it.
Perfect, perfect. So I want to just do a little bit of housekeeping here before we wind up our webinar. We want to give a big thank you, of course, to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for their sponsorship of this webinar and a lot of our services at KDLA. Please follow us on social media if you don't already. We're on Twitter and Facebook. And just wanted to highlight a couple of our upcoming webinars. We have some interesting ones coming up in March. Want to highlight that Time Management for Library Supervisors, a very specific webinar that we have at the end of March. Okay, and a reminder that this webinar was recorded and it'll be posted on our archived webinars page within the week. Please feel free to share it with your colleagues or anyone that you feel would be interested in it in your community. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a survey about today's webinar, and it will pop up in a new internet window, a new browser window on your computer. It's just a short 5-question survey, and we really appreciate your responses. They're very important to us to be able to continue to obtain federal funding for our webinars. You can download a full size copy of the slides, full page copy of the slides in the pod, the downloads pod in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Click on the one that says Skillbuilders PDF, and then click on the button beneath it that says Download File, and you'll be able to download it directly to your computer. And if you're attending the live webinar, you'll receive a certificate of attendance, and that will come in the next few days from me. And if you're watching the archived or recorded version of this webinar, we do appreciate your survey responses as well. And you'll find instructions on the archived webinars page on how to get credit for viewing this webinar. If you have any final questions for Patty, go ahead and chat those in to us. Otherwise, I think we all extend great thanks to her. I can see some very positive feedback for you, Patty. This was a really inspiring webinar. I'm not, a public library staff member, but if I were, you would have talked me into starting this program because it was very compelling, and I hope everybody really takes it and runs with it.
Well, there's contact our information there. I'll be glad to talk to anybody and share anything that we can.
Perfect. Thank you all for attending today. Whenever you're ready to exit, you can just click the X in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Great. Have fun in story time, Angie. All right, you guys have a great weekend. And Patty, thank you again so much. I hope you and I may be running into each other one day on the interstate.
Yeah, we can wait. We'll wait.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And Scott, yes, I'll hook up with Patty, and she can send those resources to me, and then I'll send them all out to you all when I email out your certificate. So don't worry about that. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Y'all have a great weekend, and thank you again, Patty.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.